How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Allfather Acres. Today we're going to do something a little special. We're going to go into making a sourdough starter. Now, eventually I do want to make my own sourdough starter with my own wheat that I grow in the garden, but for right now I'm using all-purpose flour, and you can too. So, before we hop into everything, I do have some recommendations on what you should have for when you start your sourdough starter. Editor Justin here. I don't know why I used the word vessel so much in here, but yeah, just keep that in mind. What I mean to say is like container, which is the same thing, but vessel just sounds weird. Anyways, back to the video. The first thing I recommend is having some sort of vessel to put your sourdough starter in. I'm just using an old pasta jar, pasta sauce jar rather, and you know, she's been doing pretty good. This is Big Mama. I made her about a month ago, and she's looking really awesome. The next thing I recommend is food scale. And the food scale, I'm going to use grams. This is what I'm going to use to teach you guys how to make your own sourdough starter. So those are the two things that I recommend you having. It's going to make your life so much simpler. I assume you already have a vessel, but if you don't have a kitchen scale, they're like 15 bucks at Walmart, I think. But either way, those two things plus flour and water and a lid for your jar, that's all you're going to need for this sourdough starter. Now, it does take about a week for a sourdough starter to kind of mature because you are essentially taking bacteria, good bacteria, and yeast from the air and making it into a leavening agent. But let's break this down day by day, and let's start with day one. So day one's going to be pretty simple. What you're going to do is take your vessel. I recommend weighing it out so that if you ever lose track of how much starter you have a baseline. All right, I have, a 300 gram vessel, and then you could just subtract that from whatever total weight that you have, and there you go. That's how much starter you have. But after you have that done, what you're going to do is take 50 grams of water and 50 grams of all-purpose flour, and you're going to take it, put it in your vessel, and then just mix it up. Now, the first day it might come out a little doughy. It might look like actual dough, and that's completely fine. Just cover it very, very loosely and throw it into a dark, warm place. Bring it up to room temperature. But that's it for day one. Let's move on to day two. So day two is going to be kind of just a lull day. You're not really going to do anything. You might see a little bit of brown liquid on top of your sourdough starter, which is completely fine. That's hooch. That's what they like to call hooch. And it's just a little bit of alcohol from the fermenting yeast and good bacteria. You could just incorporate that back in. But other than that, you don't really have to do anything on day two. Let's move on to day three. So day 3 through day 7 are going to be exactly the same. You have 100 grams of sourdough starter, and what you want to do is pour half of that out. So you want to end up with 50 grams. Boom, like that. Then once you have that measured out, you want to add in 50 grams of water and 50 grams of flour again. This is called feeding your starter. Now, what does that actually mean? Feeding your starter means that you want to feed the good bacteria and the yeast that are in there, and you do that by incorporating some water and fresh flour in there so that they can keep eating and feeding off the carbohydrates and whatnot. That's very important for days 3 through 7. That's all you're going to do. Pour out until you have about 50 grams, then add 50 grams each of flour and water. That's it. You're going to start, discovering some smells and whatnot. It's going to be just that sourdough smell. Now, if you have a lid on your vessel, make sure you open it up at least once a day to burp it, which means release all the gases. Now here, you're going to start seeing a lot of activity. You're going to see it like double in size within a couple of hours and then come back down probably the next day. Once it comes down, that's when you should feed your starter. If you don't really have the time to feed it every day, or if you don't feel like feeding it every day, you could throw it in the refrigerator and feed it maybe once a week. It does slow down the fermentation process a little bit, and it doesn't develop a lot of flavor as fast, but you can do it that way. But if you keep these things forever, then you won't have to worry about the flavor as much. So here's another vessel that I have. It's just an old peanut butter jar. It's nothing special. I am going to start it up so that when I take it off, I know that it's 47 grams. This vessel is 47 grams. Now I'm just going to throw in 200 grams of my already prepared starter. So there it is, 200 grams of my starter with 47 grams of my container. Because I want to expand how much starter I have, I do want to put in 200 grams of water and 200 grams of flour. And here it is with all of the ingredients. So that's going to be my starter, 200 grams of water, and 200 grams of all-purpose flour. Once it's all mixed together, then just kind of loosely top it with anything, really. I use saran wrap and a rubber band. I can't do this with one hand, but this is how there you go. This is how I store my sourdough starter. Now, the reason why I made so much sourdough starter, you really don't need to make that much, but I am going to be making 4 loaves of sourdough bread, which I'm pretty excited about. I'm going to do that in the next video. I'll show you exactly how I do it and everything. Anyways, that's about it for today. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, leave them down in the comment. Don't forget to like, and if you're not subscribed, go ahead and do that. But I'll catch you all next time, and I will give you an update on the garden and everything, hopefully within the next week or so.